Hey, good evening. Dr. Alan Christensen here with you, and happy to connect with everyone live tonight. So this is the sixth, I'm not sure. We're a fair ways into the webinar series. I kicked these off in commemoration of World Thyroid Day, and I've been doing these about these key concerns that can be helped with nutraceuticals. And we're talking about a new line that are made specifically for thyroid function, but also about the general idea on the top concerns of those with thyroid disease and ways to help with those concerns. So that's the topic here. And tonight's about the use of baseline nutraceuticals. There's certain things you need to have in place for anything else to work. Oh, I'm seeing a note that audio is not coming through. Cannot hear Dr.C. Okay, so let's see. Microphone. Oh, no, audio is coming through, it looks like. It appears to be working on my end. So if it's not on yours, please double check your speaker setting. Yeah, thank you for the feedback, though, saying that it is working. I checked my settings, and if it wasn't working, I wouldn't know what to do, because it looks like it is from my end. So yeah, this is about baseline micronutrients, and this is super important. You know, there's some things we really do need, and we get a lot from the diet, but not always everything. And I'm seeing their note, keep freezing. I am freezing because it's below zero here. Kidding aside, my bandwidth is probably a little bit lower, so I'll do my best. Some are seeing issues with that, some are not. But yeah, and I'm with you guys on a couple of formats right now. We are together on Zoom and also on Instagram and also on Facebook. The studio audience, the most in-depth experience was taking place on Zoom. And I saw Josh, my assistant, with us tonight, the guy who takes care of all the things that makes it all work, because I wouldn't always know how to do that. But yes, Josh is with, he can put a link up. So if you want to have the full-on studio audience experience, come on over to Zoom. We'll do some live questions on Zoom afterward. I'll speak for about half hour, give or take a few minutes about this topic, and we'll grab some live questions on it. And that'll take place on Zoom. I'm with you all on the different formats. I can't see the comments quite as well. I can't engage as thoroughly, but in Zoom, we can talk live in real time. If you are on Zoom and you know you have one or you will get a question, you're welcome to raise your hand. There's an option under the participants control that lets you do so. And if you do, I see your hands up. I see a bunch up already. And after I'm done saying the piece here, I'll grab a bunch of those and we'll talk in depth about that. And yeah, the topic's going to be about micronutrients for thyroid disease. And I will get some slides up right now and we will get going. All right. There we go. So yeah, the topic is going to be about the 23 essential micronutrients for thyroid health. And this is one to where, you know, all the other topics were about specific symptoms. They were about key pain points. And some of the future ones will be as well. But this one is about almost kind of like an insurance policy. You know, it's not as sexy because it's not something you roll out of bed and you feel. You know, like if we're talking about the antibodies or the nodules, it's something you're aware of. This is something that you wouldn't think of, but it's critical for anything else to work. You know, your thyroid needs all these things to function well, and most do not get those. Most get far more pills than they should take, and yet they miss out on things that are important. This is something I've called just polysupplementation or pill overload. I've done a lot of retreats, and I did a survey a while back, and I tracked how many supplements typical people that come to my retreats were taking. And the average number was 26. So the average person was on 26 different supplements. And the bizarre thing is that with all those different supplements, they were still missing out on many things that were essential. I would often find that they were getting things that were counterproductive, but also just lacking in stuff. So the trick about supplementation is something to where you want to get what you need, but you don't want to get anything extra. You don't want to get things that are unnecessary. You know, I think a lot about the story of the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You know, you want just the precise amounts. And what we now know is that nutrients, they have what's called a J-shaped curve of a response, where they do something different when there's a lot, and something different when there's very little, and then something different when there's this right amount. But too much can actually work just like too little. and we can see a lot of the same limits and the same complications. This is true for pretty much all nutrients, but some it's really dramatic. Iodine being one of the biggest examples of that. We need some for thyroid function, but a little bit extra can just shut the thyroid off better than anything. We know this is true for vitamin D, for selenium, for iron, for B12. They all work in a similar way. If you lack them, there's a problem, there's a deficit. But if you're getting too much of those, it can actually create the exact same issues that can happen when there's too little. So it's really about precision. And one of my favorite analogies that I've thought of is that, I used to think that nutrients, hormones, that these things were kind of like a gas pedal, that the more you did, the more you got. If B vitamins, if lack of B vitamins made you tired, then a monster dose of B vitamins should make you a monster, should give you like huge amounts of energy. So that's like the intuitive understanding of biochemistry. But the real understanding of biochemistry is not like that. They're not like a gas pedal. They're more like a key. So if you don't have a key, the car won't move. But if you have extra keys, the car won't move fast. And far too many keys could possibly get in the way and make the car not work. If you put 1,000 keys in your gas tank, your car won't move at all. So this is the trick, is you need the right things in the right place, the right quantities, the right forms. And your thyroid, like all of your body, depends upon a full mixture of nutrients. Some of the big reasons your thyroid needs that, well, to make its actual hormones. And the nutrients there are usually not rate limiting, but too much of them can inhibit the formation of hormones. We need adequate amounts of iodine, which we readily get in the modern world. We need selenium to buffer iodine, help all the enzymes work. We need tyrosine, that's like the building block on which thyroglobulin is made, but that's something we don't really run out of. And then we need many essential ones for this process to come together. So, for example, we have to have proper regulation of these hormones, and that involves orchestration between the hypothalamus and the pituitary. Cell receptors have to work right. We've got to regulate the circulating amounts of T3 and T4, and we need a healthy immune response. And these things depend upon a full array of all nutrients. And, I always hear this dichotomy debate, like, you shouldn't take a pill, you should eat good food. It's not an either or. You'll do better by really covering both of those bases. There's many things that are diet supplies that we'll never get in pills. All the critical phytonutrients in food. And the active ingredient in onions is not quercetin, it's onions. And beets, it's not nitrates, it's beets. There's a lot of things in food that we cannot replicate. The quantities and the proportions are just exacting and precise. And at the same time, there are some simple essential things we need from food that food can fall short on. One of my real aha moments about this, I did this exercise myself. Back in the day, we didn't have apps and nutrient facts, nutrient meter apps or whatnot. So I took a big book that showed the contents of pretty much any food you can imagine and all of its micronutrients. And I tracked my food for a week and did all the math on that and found that even though I was eating healthy, a lot of things I was running short on. And then for quite a few years, I taught in medical school, and I would have the young doctors do the same exercise. There's this bias that, a well-balanced diet will give you all the vitamins and minerals you need. So whenever someone says that, ask them how they know, and ask them if they've actually ever measured or tracked their diet to see that. If you do track your diet by a modern method or by an old method, you will find that it does not. You need good food. You want to focus on good food. But when you get down to the numbers, a diet will fall short on many essential nutrients. And that's before we think about things like soil depletion, about how medications can cause different needs for nutrients, also how exposure to various toxicants can change nutritional requirements, as can processed foods. And all of this doesn't even take into account the big range of biochemical individuality. Some people, just by dint of their genetic variants, they can need much more than someone else might. And these things cannot be well met through diet only. So it does take some smart ads to help get that to a good range. And the other consideration is that there's a lot of things that act as anti-nutrients that we commonly come across. These are some of the biggest ones that are big to look out for those with thyroid disease. So iodine, if you've heard me talk much, you probably heard me rant about this before. I won't go into too much depth. But the short story is that while your thyroid needs iodine to work, extra iodine shuts down your thyroid and also can drive the whole autoimmune response. So we need some, but by and large in the modern world, we're more apt to get too much than too little. And many can tolerate too much, but many cannot. And those who cannot are those who are prone to get thyroid disease. We see a large range in iodine tolerance, but there's really not much range for iodine requirements. How much we need is just based upon age, size, and gender. So yeah, many are susceptible to the harms of excess iodine, and they can be myriad. Folic acid, there's almost a complete overlap between variations on MTHFR genes and the risk for thyroid disease. So if someone has a variation on this gene, they may not process folic acid effectively. They may not be able to effectively methylate it. And this is a case to where the thing that doesn't work, it's not just that it doesn't work, is that it blocks the other things from working. So I think about this like a key that breaks off and jams in a lock. So not only can you not open the door, but now the right key won't even work. So to tie that back to the analogy, folic acid can not only not help methylation, it can block methylation and inhibit the effects of natural folate. B6, this is a fascinating one I'll touch on a bit more in depth later, but many cannot utilize this well, and a form of it can cause a broad range of side effects for people. And we're seeing more thought about megadose B vitamins, and there are those who find they are more sensitive to them, and they're better off with amounts that are within the range of recommended dietary allowance. Fun trivia question. So RDA, it's not recommended daily allowance. That's what you always hear, but that's actually not what it stands for. It's dietary allowance. And the relevance of that is it's not based upon a daily need, it's based upon an average need over a 7-day period. So yeah, more trying to avoid those. So I'm going to talk through not all 23, you'd be fast asleep before then, but I'll hit a few of the highlights. I'm going to talk about several of these key nutrients and why they're essential to thyroid function, what are some in-depth stories behind them and the forms that work well, the forms that don't, and the amounts. And it's a pretty fascinating thing. So first I'll start with vitamin B1, also known as thiamine. This is one that we need for maintaining normal thiamine blood levels. This is a critical part of forming thyroid peroxidase. It's also essential for regulating the overall immune response, for inhibiting autoimmunity, and for energy production. There was a trial done in which thiamine supplementation was given for those that had fatigue secondary to Hashimoto's. And they found that in proper quantities, the fatigue could reduce by roughly 80%. So the vast majority saw big reductions in fatigue, specifically with Hashimoto's. And yeah, these are human trials. So if you're newer here, something that I think is important is having evidence, having a basis in fact for what I say and what I believe, but not only that, having high quality evidence. So if you're willing to, scrape the bottom of the barrel, you can find evidence to say anything whatsoever. But that doesn't mean that it's all a crapshoot. That doesn't mean that all opinions are equal. No, there's a process by which you can honestly look and find what is the highest quality evidence and what is the overall consensus amongst high quality evidence. And that's my approach. So I'm not just saying here's some random animal study that says X, Y, Z. I'm saying the consensus of high quality studies, this is what they tell us. And even further than that, I think about the thyroid specific consensus of evidence. So not just what does this do to people overall, but how does this affect specifically those that have thyroid disease? And that's where we often get really different answers. B vitamins, I had a couple more of those. B4, not like prior to, but B4. When they discovered these B vitamins, it was a pretty exciting time. And they found them in a sequence, they were numbered. There were many things that were thought to be B vitamins that didn't pass all the cuts. So we don't have all the numbers in place. And in some cases, the numbers became how they were known. In other cases, the chemical name became more prevalent. And B4 we normally think of as folates, as the folate compounds. And in this case, methylfolate is a preferred type. This is one that does not require active methylation. It's already pre-methylated. So not only is it easier to assimilate by the body, but it lacks the harmful negative effects of the synthetic folic acid. There's data saying that the synthetic versions can be factors for risk factors for certain types of cancer, including colorectal cancer. As methylation improves, many notice that cognitive function does quite a bit better, and neurologic function does as well. So this can translate into less anxiety, better sleep, better digestion, fewer headaches. So all good stuff. On the B vitamins, I also want to talk a bit about pyridoxal 5-phosphate. So this is important. I see many who are lacking in this. Now, this is something that we find pyridoxine compounds in food naturally occurring, and our body can make them into pyridoxal 5-phosphate. Many supplements will use pyridoxine HCl, pyridoxine hydrochloride it's called. That's a synthetic B6 that requires conversion and activation. And the paradox here is many with thyroid disease cannot make pyridoxal 5-phosphate, we can call it P5P for short. Many can't make that out of synthetic B6. So this is one of those cases to where synthetic B6, it's not only toxic by itself, but it blocks the activity of B6 because it keeps the body from making what it needs. And so you can end up with symptoms of B6 deficiency. And those can include significant neurologic symptoms, numbness and pain in extremities, significant mood changes, anxiety, disturbances with sleep. These are quite common. It can also worsen anemias when the body cannot actively make active forms of B6. But P5P is already activated. And they've shown that there are not the same dose-related side effects with it as there are from pyridoxine hydrochloride. Pyridoxine hydrochloride, this is one that sometimes can be measured on blood tests. And I've had scores of times to where someone had a B6 blood test done and was found to be in the toxic range. It's extremely common when someone has pyridoxal hydrochloride in their supplementation. And I've had scores of times where people had significant anxiety or fatigue symptoms that were just unresolved. They kept trying to adjust their thyroid, change their diet. Nothing helped. And it turned out they were B6 toxic. So this is the thing, is that these are important, but they take so much more deliberate thought. And oftentimes people can do more harm than good without it being done in a deliberate way. So more numbers, more B numbers. B7, this is also biotin. This is a real thing. And this is also one where there's a real conundrum. There's been data saying that 38% of women with hair loss may be low in biotin. It can be a factor. But here's the but. Too much of it can have negative effects upon thyroid function and thyroid labs. So mega doses of biotin are counterproductive. You can not only get goopy scores, but your body cannot utilize thyroid hormones effectively. So this is back to that Goldilocks idea. So I'm seeing a lot more jump on. Let me give a quick PSA update again for you guys. So with you all live tonight from the great North Woods, I wish you could see outside. It's kind of like being in a snow globe up here. Finishing up another book, finishing up the cookbook. That'll be out another year. And with you all talking about essential nutrients for thyroid function with you guys on Facebook, Instagram, and on Zoom, most importantly. So at Zoom, we've got our studio audience. I'll talk with you all a bit afterward. And if you're not there, but you want to be, you're welcome to come. The links will be available on whatever platform you're on. Grab the link. We've got a little bit of space left in the Zoom room, and you can come on and do some live Q&A with me in a bit. I'll be wrapping up the discussion rather shortly, and we'll talk about your micronutrient questions. Those of you who are on Zoom, a lot of you have been here before. I see a lot of hands up already. If you didn't know, under your participant control menu, you can press a button and raise your hand. And there's a queue, there's a list form to those who have done so. And once I finish a couple more slides, we'll start going live with your questions. And I'll grab those in order of which they come up. So, okay, back to our show. Last one in the B series is B12 or methylcobalamin. Pretty cool thing. There's been data saying that up to 40% of those with thyroid disease can be low in this. And that's a pretty strong overlap with the rate of autoimmune gastritis in thyroid disease. With autoimmune gastritis, the cells that help B12 absorption, called the parietal cells, they can become damaged via an autoimmune process. That can have an effect upon B12 and also iron absorption. So methylcobalamin, the big advancement with this form is that Now it's available in forms that are more water soluble. And as such, in appropriate dosages, they can be as effective as injectable B12. So that's a pretty big advancement. Many in the past did not do well assimilating oral B12, but now that can be as effective in almost all cases. When B12 is off, this is a huge thing for neurologic symptoms and overall fatigue. The general idea is that your red blood cells need to be small in order to squeeze out the little openings and deliver oxygen to your cells. So they're just like little floppy frisbees. They fold themselves over. They can squirm out of the little gaps in the capillaries and unload oxygen to your tissues. But if they're too big, they can't get out, and your tissues are starved of oxygen. So it's just like holding your breath or having lung disease. That's what happens when B12 is lacking, is that the red blood cells can't shrink enough. They are not yet matured and they're still too big. That's what we call them megaloblastic anemia, because they're big and they can't get out. They're less functional. A couple more to cover. So here's one that's fascinating. Vitamin C. This is also one to where megadoses are like a deficiency. You can actually get a vitamin C deficiency by megadosing on vitamin C. You can develop rebound scurvy that way. But in the right amounts, it's useful. There was a clinical trial showing that appropriate amounts can improve TSH scores by 68% and also help regulate T3 and T4 levels. But this is the thing with nutrients. There's a window of efficacy. It's not a matter of just throw a lot in and figure that you'll have enough to get a job done, because too much can block the job. Vitamin D is a classic example of that one too. There's been so much confusion about this nutrient. In Europe, they check in a form called nanomole per liter. Here we talk about it in terms of nanograms per mil. Nanomoles per liter are 2.5 times higher. So what happened is there's been all these clinical trials, and also I should say most published research cites them in the international units, the metric units, the nanomoles per liter. So published studies have this units, and then when they talk about blood tests, common blood tests in the States, they're different units. I have a scale here at the cabin that keeps going back to kilograms. if my weight suddenly switched to kilograms, it'd be like I went down by more than half. So I'm about like 170 pounds or about like 77 kilograms. Well, if I thought I was 77 pounds, that would be weird, right? That's basically what happened with vitamin D. The people weren't paying attention to kilograms versus pounds, or like kilometers per hour versus miles per hour. If someone switched and didn't know it, they'd get really goofy readings. And that's what's created all these misinformed ideas about vitamin D. Too many people read these research articles in metric units and then directly translated those units into blood levels that we have in the United States. So you've got to take them down by a factor of 2.5. So whenever someone says your vitamin D should be 80 to 120 for optimal immune function, the question is, in which units? Because that's true for metric units, but that's not the units we get our blood test done in the States. So the paradox, though, is that when we're above a certain range, not only does it not work, it raises mortality risk. So it becomes counterproductive. Another big wrinkle about vitamin D we now know is that when you're sick, your vitamin D levels get lower. And for a long time, we thought that the low vitamin D caused the sickness. Now we know it does contribute to many bad health outcomes, and you don't want to be deficient in it. But much more commonly, whenever someone has unchecked inflammation in their body, that suppresses vitamin D. It might even be an adaptive suppression. We don't know. But the cause and the effect chain is not what we thought it was. So megadose vitamin D supplements are not a good thing. There was a podcast I did with a doctor talking about how she's had many patients who were hypercalcemic from doses of vitamin D that aren't that uncommon. Many can take as little as 5,000 units or so, and they can get high levels of blood calcium, which can actually be full-on disabling. And at the same time, people can be low in vitamin D. That's exceedingly common without supplementing with some of it. So it's exacting amounts. That's a recurrent story, and exacting forms. Vitamin E, this is one to where natural forms can make a good difference. There's been human papers showing that they can actually reverse the cognitive decline that can often go along with hypothyroidism. Calcium. This is a fascinating one too. I mentioned that a moment ago in reference to vitamin D. What we now know is that calcium can do two different sets of reactions. It can mineralize or it can calcify. So when it mineralizes, it helps the body properly conduct messages throughout the nervous system, repair connective tissue, tendons, ligaments, bones, and participate in a wide range of chemical reactions. But when it calcifies, it just gloms onto wherever there's chronic inflammation in the body. So think about like an oyster making a pearl. You get some grit inside the shell, it's irritating the soft tissue, and then calcium forms to protect things. So that's calcification around a spot of inflammation. Our bodies do that as well. So if we have too much insoluble calcium, we calcify. And this is a big part of coronary artery plaque, joint calcification, kidney stones, gallstones, lots of things that we do not want. We also know that many forms of calcium can be an issue with thyroid medication absorption. So the types that are different can actually be taken as soon as an hour after thyroid meds and not interfere with their absorption. And the last big consideration is that thyroid hormones can cause leaching of calcium if there's too little or too much. So many with thyroid disease are at higher risk for osteoporosis. And I also think about this because a lot of the dietary sources of calcium can be sources of high amounts of iodine. So those who are on iodine-regulated diets, they run the risk of being low in calcium without being somewhat deliberate about that. A couple more, chromium. There's been some overlap with thyroid disease and diabetes, and also some papers showing that those with thyroid disease tend to have higher tendencies towards chromium deficiency. We do see that. Copper is an important one that can also be toxic when there's too much. Copper is essential for superoxide dismutase. Back in the 90s, we were all aglow about antioxidants. And the thought was that if so many diseases were affected by free radicals, then we should cure everything with antioxidants. And it didn't pan out. What we now know is that the body makes its own antioxidants that are far more powerful than those that we would take with antioxidant supplements. And one of the key ones here is superoxide dismutase. We also know that serum copper equates to T4 levels. In fact, that's so important, I felt the need to say that twice. It's doubled on the slide. Serum copper can affect TSH response as well. So there's direct links to this and thyroid output. Magnesium, so much data about it being involved in tons of chemical reactions, many of which are relevant to synthesis of brain chemistry, regulation of thyroid hormones, control of blood sugar, most everything. And this is one that we commonly run low in as well. So we fertilize foods with NPK, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and that does accelerate magnesium leaching from foods. So a lot of tables that will show magnesium content in various foods are now misleading because foods generally have less than we thought they did because the levels are not current. Molybdenum. This is a key micromineral that we don't hear about quite as much, but there's been data saying that those who are lower in this are more apt to develop thyroid disease. We also know that one's molybdenum status correlates with their risk of thyroid disease progression or improvement. We also know that it's essential for a big range of phase 1 liver enzymes. And selenium, we talked about this. This is one that I do include in the multi, and I've included it in several of the formulations as well. And I've been mindful of the additive doses of it. There are times to where you do want to augment your baseline dose to a point, but there can be times to where it becomes excessive. And if magnesium exceeds roughly 400 micrograms per day per supplements, if selenium exceeds roughly 400 micrograms per day in supplements, it causes symptoms that look like selenium deficiency, oddly enough. So I was mindful in making the formulations to where one could not exceed that. You would always get right amounts, but you would not get excessive amounts. And this is relevant for just all versions of thyroid disease. And just to put minds at ease, that concern about excess really doesn't relate to dietary selenium. So the one source of dietary selenium that has a lot would be the Brazil nuts. They have a version that the body excretes quite readily, so it does not bioaccumulate and become toxic. Zinc, also a big one. We need this for regulating thyroid hormones. we've seen that small amounts of appropriate zinc supplementation can also improve thyroid function in women who have hypothyroidism and weight struggles. So clinical trials have showed this one as well. And last up on the list would be EPA and DHA. So these are two of the essential fats. The essential fatty acids, well, there are two subtypes, I should say. The two essential fats are alpha-linolenic acid and linoleic acid. And alpha-linolenic acid can be made into EPA and DHA. Now, that made into part doesn't always work right. There's an enzyme called delta-5 desaturase. In many cases, that's underactive in cases of thyroid disease. So these are two fats that, although we can activate them from other sources, it's better to get them in pre-made forms. These are fats that have huge roles on stopping excess runaway inflammation. And especially DHA can be difficult to produce internally. So good to get in direct versions. So winding this down, coming to questions pretty quick. The question I get a lot is, so we've got this bundle, which I'm leading towards, the Daily Reset bundle. And that's the Thyroid Daily Multivitamin with calcium, magnesium, and also with essential fats. What about the Daily Reset pack? Which one should I do? You can do fine on either. The pack is better if you prefer high-dose B vitamins and if you prefer the convenience of packs. So you got a pack, you just have that one pack twice daily. Now, the bundle is fewer pills and it's once daily dosing. I reformulated that so it could be one daily dose. What I learned was that a really high percent of people did well with their first pack in the morning, but the second pack later in the day, not so much. It wouldn't happen very often. So that was one reason I wanted to make one a day possible. I also wanted to work hard to lower the pill count. It's hard to take more than a few pills on a regular basis. And my experience is that if people try to do too much, they end up doing too little or none at all, and they miss out on the things that are critical. And I've also got a lot of feedback from those who wanted to do lower dose B vitamins. They have found they prefer avoiding some of the high doses of the B complex. And it's fine both ways. If you're open either way, I'd say take the bundle. It'll be fewer pills, be very precise and targeted. If you've done the pack and it's worked well, stick with the pack. We'll keep it available for you. So using the bundle, pretty easy thing, just once a day, an hour after your thyroid medication, and we've got a total pill count of 5. It's 3 pills for the calcium magnesium, 1 each for the Thyroid Daily and the Omega Pure. Now, there are those who like the gentle sedative effect from calcium magnesium, and they prefer to take either some or all of their calcium magnesium closer to bedtime. That's totally fine. If you can do it at once and you're saying, hey, look, if I got one shot, that's when I'm going to do it, go for it. It'll work well like that. But if you'd rather take those in the evening and have that help your muscles be a bit more relaxed, totally okay too. It won't cause daytime grogginess. That's not an issue, but you can do that both ways. And these are really foundational to all other formulations. So when I've talked about like antibody support, hyperthyroid support, nodule control, I made all of those assuming that you're getting this stuff in here. If I didn't do that, what would happen is there would have to be a lot of overlap. And those on multiple formulations would run the risk of getting too much of certain things. And you've heard me talk so much about how there's these exact narrow windows. And I'm thinking about that not just for like one product, but for the whole product suite. I want to make sure that you're not going to do a couple of things together and let that throw you off, because that wouldn't be fair. That wouldn't be the point. So the whole suite is meant to be an integrated whole with the bundle as the foundation of that. So these are at thyroid-specific formulations at shop.thyroidspecificformulations.com. I believe the link will be available for you all in the notes there. But that was the main spiel. This is one that's a little bit briefer, and I'm eager to grab a few questions. Yeah, I wish you could see what I can see. There's a bit of light outside and the snow blowing across the view. It's really beautiful here. Okay, so my friends on Instagram, I think you can actually see some of the snow blowing behind me every now and then. But I'm going to say goodnight to you all. And if you do want to come and join the studio audience and get the backstage experience, do some direct questions, come on over. There's a Zoom link available for you. We'd love to have you. We'll be on there for a few more minutes. In the meantime, take great care. Bye-bye. Okay, so we've goodnighted our Instagram friends. And now I'm going to go off the slides. Here we go. and we will grab some questions. Now I can see all your lovely, well, not all, but those who are in my view and those whose cameras are on. Oh, I'll tell you guys a secret here. When I see a lot of hands up, it's a lot of fun to see people in person. And I think others enjoy that as well. So I'm going to give a little bias towards that. So if you can be on your camera, love to have you. And it's fun to talk that way directly in person. So, okay. And I'll also grab a few new names whenever possible. Let's see. So here's Carrie. I'm going to go with Carrie here. So I'll hit ask to unmute. You'll be able to unmute yourself and then just go for it and I'll start hearing you. So, all right, Carrie, you are up.
Hi, thank you for taking my...
Oh, Carrie, I'm so sorry. I must not have my audio connected properly. Let me just get, because I can't hear you.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think that is me. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
And microphone, speaker. Okay, how about now?
Can you hear me now?
I sure can. There we go.
Okay, great. I tried to ask this on the last call and I didn't make it through. I'm actually in Canada, so I haven't really been able to purchase the supplements, but I have been able to purchase your book. I guess my main question is, all my thyroid numbers are fine, my TSH, my T4, my T3. I just have very stubborn antibodies and they come in at the low 2. So the last blood test was 213 and 237. I don't know if our units are the same. It's K.
For antibodies, they are.
Okay, great. So they've always just stayed the same. They don't really go up. They don't really go down. They stay in and around that level. Do I need to be concerned? I don't eat a lot of processed food. My diet's pretty good. Do I have some symptoms sometimes? Yes. I mean, I'm 52. Sometimes I get fatigued, but do I have a consistent where I can't function type of fatigue or anything like that? No. So I found some of your messages have said if you're below 500 and everything's functioning normally, you don't necessarily have to do anything. And then other messages say that you should try and lower the antibodies. So I'm just a little maybe confused as to what I should be doing, if anything. And do I have to worry about them?
Do you know about reship.com? I just put that up in chat.
Say that again?
Reship.com.
Reship.com.
I just put that up in the chat notes.
Okay.
So this is a pretty cool thing. And actually someone on one of these events told me about this. So by using reship.com, you can order things in Canada or other countries that you couldn't order normally in your country.
Okay.
The way Reship works is you get an account with them and they give you a US address you can use and you order whatever you want to order, ship to that address, they reship to you anywhere in the world. So that's a pretty cool thing. And not just for me, but anything else you'd want to get that you couldn't get in Canada, you can get it in Canada with reship.com.
Okay, that's good to know.
That was the first part of the question. The second part about the antibodies. So if you didn't already, please check the replay about the antibody talk. I went through this a little bit. But
I did. Yes, okay. I listened to all of it.
Reasons to lower them would be cardiovascular risk, fertility, usually not a concern at 52, and then chronic symptoms, hair thinning, facial swelling, overall fatigue. So if there's no big chronic symptoms, no significant cardiovascular risk, probably not a big factor.
Okay. Okay, because I mean, you said somewhere dry eyes. I have dry eyes, but again, that could be an age-related thing. So I wasn't sure if that was one of the factors too.
At the same time, a lot of things I mentioned about lowering the antibodies are general things that are good anyways. Regulating iodine, being at a healthy weight, baseline micronutrients. So there's some good things too that are overall useful. There are more antibody-specific therapies, which may not be as critical for you.
Okay, so should I be trying like the black cumin seed and all of those things that you've suggested to lower the antibodies, or you don't think that's necessary at this stage?
If there's not other reasons for that, I wouldn't.
Okay.
And to be really precise, black cumin seed, so this is Nigella sativa, and there's actually subspecies. So the studies that were done in Iran, and they used specific subspecies of Nigella sativa. Okay. It wasn't so much, and there's a million versions of black cumin seed and Nigella that are out. So it's the actual subspecies from the clinical trials. So so many think that I'll just find some black cumin. It might not be the same subspecies at all. So that's just one distinction. But in your case, it's probably not a critical thing anyway.
Okay. So, I mean, it all started because I did have nodules and they all went down. So since then, everything's kind of calmed down. So it sounds like just be aware of them and keep your eye on them, but I don't have to make drastic changes to anything.
I would agree.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's see. Pamela, you're queued up here. Let's see what you got for us this evening.
Yes, hello. Good evening.
Pamela.
I'm also in Canada, so I would definitely check out Reship.
Yeah.
But I was already in the process of checking low iodine fish oils, and some companies were willing to share their testing results with me. So what am I looking for in terms of amounts? Like what would be a low iodine fish oil?
Well, overall, your daily target is less than 100 micrograms per day. Fish oil products should be less than roughly 10 micrograms per serving. Okay. And then you report that in different units. But yeah, if they are doing recurrent assays and tests, they come below that. That's probably a decent option. But yeah, if Reship's available for you, we do test ours, and we do know that they are low and they're certified as such.
Okay, perfect. And would you prefer a higher EPA to DHA ratio?
There's a lot of talk about the various ratios between the two. And really, if you're targeting at least 200 milligrams of each per day, you'll be in good shape. There's a lot of arguments about the ratios are not getting the fact that it's not that you really force up the levels of one against the other. They don't really work in opposition anyway. So they're things your body needs, but there's really not a logic behind a certain ratio of them when we get down to the biochemistry of it.
Okay. Thank you. And one last question I had. I was taught, and I think it's probably wrong, that low iodine can interfere with prolactin levels. And I was taught that when it was about fibroids for breasts. And so I was always suggested to take iodine to prevent this. So
So iodine and fibrocystic breast disease. So the funny thing is that there's been this iodine fad in functional medicine, and that's kind of what started it. So there were clinical trials showing that megadose iodine could lower the symptoms of fibrocystic breast disease. And that spun a lot of theories that somehow the breast needed these high amounts of iodine. And we know that iodine can do a lot of things that don't relate to its role as a nutrient. And if I walked outside and snagged my arm on a thorn, I could possibly get an infection. Iodine might help that infection. That doesn't mean that iodine deficiency caused the infection, right? So in the case of fibrocystic breast disease, we now know that along with the thyroid, the breast tissue expresses the sodium iodide symporter, also called NIS. So breast cells can concentrate iodine. And we know there's a range of NIS activity. In normal non-lactating breast tissue, it's dormant. There's no real iodine concentration going on. When women are lactating, they will concentrate iodine for the same reason the thyroid does, because the serum levels are not adequate for nutritional needs. But when women have breast cancer, there's extremely high concentrations of NIS activity and high levels of iodine present. We now know that, for example, with Japanese women, those that have the greatest amount of iodine exposure have the highest rates of breast cancer. We've seen this in other cultures as well. But between breast cancer, normal, and pregnancy, closer to breast cancer is fibroadenomatous disease. We now know that fibroadenomatous disease also has an overactive expression of NIS. And so with the thyroid, a high dose of iodine stops NIS. And that's how iodine can stop hyperthyroid storm. And that's how chronic exposure to iodine can slow the thyroid. So in the case of breast tissue and breast tissue overexpression of NIS, what's happening is that pump is pulling in iodine and sodium and therefore water. So fluid builds up, the cells enlarge, they're stored and they're painful. And just like it shuts down the thyroid, high dose iodine can shut down NIS expression in the breast tissue. So it temporarily causes a decrease of that fluid buildup. So it's not at all that it's nutritionally helpful, it's that it's pharmacologically suppressing it. But there's no direct role between that and prolactin, and no direct tie between prolactin and fibrocystic disease. However, there is a tie between prolactin and thyrotropin releasing hormone, so a prolactin-thyroid connection, but I won't go into that because that's a different story.
Okay, so there's nothing really to worry about, and if you have this, you don't need to supplement with iodine in order to relieve it.
No, and the thing is, the same way someone has hyperthyroidism, megadose iodine may temporarily help, but it can cause bigger problems down the road. And the same thing with fibrocystic breast disease. There's been data taking place showing that urinary iodine excretion in populations can be a valid screening tool for breast cancer. So we also know that higher iodine status correlates with overall risk and death from all cancers combined. So yes, it's not a good thing.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you so much. Those were my questions.
You're welcome. Good questions. Okay, let me remute real quick here. Okay. I'm on different Zoom controls, you guys. I'm on a smaller computer tonight. Here we go. Okay, so Amber, you are up. Go for it. What have you got for us?
Unmute. Okay. First of all, thank you for being so gracious to give us your knowledge like this. My question is, I have the metabolism boost, and I was wondering if there's a problem taking it at the same time with like your B complex and vitamin D and collagen, which now I think maybe I should just throw these in the trash so I don't take too much. Like I take Synthroid and then I wait half an hour and then I take the metabolism boost with these other supplements and breakfast all at the same time. But I don't want to cancel something out if I shouldn't take it. You
wouldn't really cancel anything out. If you're staying pretty steady, you can do as you are. Some need more like a full hour between the Synthroid and their other supplements or things, but nothing would really cancel out from that. The B vitamins, look out for folic acid. You know, most of those have synthetic folic acid in there, and that's a carcinogen for those with thyroid disease.
Oh, the folate, is that the same thing? It says 400 mcg of folic acid.
Yep, if it says folic acid, that's a synthetic version of folate.
And you should not be taking a supplement with that. Oh, okay. That goes in the trash. Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Collagen's harmless enough. You know, there early along when it was kind of hitting the scene, there was a few papers suggesting it was really high in lead. And they also said it was a rich source of calcium, and that would have made sense. We now know it's not a rich source of calcium, and the lead is probably negligible. It's probably not significant amounts of lead in there. But there's just debates as to, does it do what it's supposed to do? That's kind of open in the air, but there's not really clear harm to it. The one thing about collagen is people shouldn't use it as a protein supplement. So there's like collagen pills, and that's one thing. But there's like collagen protein powders.
Yeah,
and that's something where it's not so much that it's dangerous, but it's not doing what they think it's doing. It doesn't actually work as a protein supplement. So that's one that does grind my gears. You know, if someone's low in protein and they supplement with collagen, they're still low in protein, but they think they're not. So that's the one thing.
Yeah, the trainers are saying, you know, put the collagen powder in your protein shakes. So,
well, it's something to where if you need 100 grams of protein per day and you're getting 20 of that from collagen, it's not like you're only getting 80. It's not like the collagen is not working and you're just getting 80. It's like you're getting 60. What happens is you're flooding the body with a lot of non-essential amino acids, and that takes your pool of existing essential amino acids and it deletes them. So it's not just that you're not getting something, it's you're coming out more behind than you would be otherwise.
Oh. Well, geez, I got to throw all this stuff away now. Okay, thank you.
You know, my favorite is really pea protein. As far as it's not quite as high quality as whey, but whey is high in iodine. And the drop in quality you can easily make up for with an adequate dosage. So if your dosage is in the range of a 30-gram dose, even with pea, you'll more than compensate for that quality difference. And it's clean. There's no big issues with iodine or other factors like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let me remute real quick here. Here we go. And let's grab several more. Emily, I see Emily here. I'm going to ask to unmute and go for it.
Hi, Dr. C. Thank you for taking my question.
My pleasure.
I had a question about riboflavin and niacin and its role in thyroid hormone synthesis. Many thyroid hormone supplements that I give my patients contain high doses of riboflavin, and I've been reading that it has a role in forming thyroid hormone, and I just wanted to know what you thought about that.
Well, it's essential, but the question is how much is needed, you know, and where's that sweet spot at? And the data keeps saying that it's lower than we thought, that it's not the highest amounts for all people. So the relevance of it is that to be really precise, not so much thyroid hormone formation, but more so deformation. So we make them by sticking iodine onto thyroglobulin, and then we utilize them by popping iodine off of thyroglobulin. So we're iodinating and then deiodinating. So it's the deiodinase enzymes that depend upon riboflavin 5-phosphatase. And that's something where we don't commonly see riboflavin deficiencies anymore. And this is a trend too, is that we can look at a lot of things that nutrients can do, and we can then think, oh, if there's more of the nutrient, we'll do more of this thing. It's like, well, usually not. If the nutrient's lacking, like the same thing, if the keys are missing, the cars won't go. But if it's there, more of that doesn't make the car go faster. So I think more about really just streamlining and targeting. You want some baseline amount. I do include riboflavin in my baseline nutrients, but it's one that in the newer form, I didn't put in mega doses. At the end of the day, anything that goes in your mouth, this is funny because they say that you are what you eat, and they say that your gut is where you meet the world. Not so much. It's really your liver, because your gut, if you imagine so here's my chapstick, right? So if my mouth was a tube like this big around and it went 3 feet down and out the other end, right? So if I dropped a chapstick in this tube, it would fall right through and it wouldn't interact with my organs or my body in any way. My gut's just like that. It's just longer and narrower. So what you swallow is not in your body. It's what you assimilate. And what you assimilate, the first port of call is your liver. So the splanchnic nerves and the whole vascular tree pulls all the venous blood through the liver first from the intestinal tract. So all things to the liver first before they go anywhere else. And the liver's got to process all of that. And we now know that the 20% of the time, if someone is hospitalized with acute liver failure, it comes from supplements, believe it or not, and from too many supplements. And in almost all those cases, it's not even that they took supplements that were known to be hepatotoxic. They just had an excessive combination. And we now know that the combinations work different than the constituents do in ways that we can't always predict. So I think more and more about just targeting and being gentle on the liver and, getting what we need, but not overdoing things. Well, thank you for being out there in the front line, helping out with thyroid patients as well. Appreciate that. Hey, there's Tina. There's my old friend Tina with us. How you doing there, Tina?
Thank you for taking my call.
Good to see you tonight.
Thank you. Good to see you too. I have a real simple question about magnesium. I read, and I don't remember where, and that you should be careful about taking it with thyroid medication. So how long of a period of time should one wait?
Yeah, an hour does the job.
Okay.
And that's true for pretty much anything. When you really dig down on it, there are some nutrients that in some cases, some people, they need longer gaps. There's been papers about calcium, for example. And this is especially the more insoluble forms of calcium, like bone-derived calcium, oyster shell, calcium carbonate, microcrystalline hydroxyapatite. These types may interfere with thyroid absorption, even if they're taken 6 to 8 hours afterward. So they can take a really big gap. There's also a paper about coffee doing that for a long time frame afterward. But most of those things can be, magnesium itself can be fine even an hour afterward. Now, in megadose, magnesium naturally acts as a laxative. So in whopping doses, even an hour afterward, it can affect absorption. But that's generally doses that are above 500 to 600 milligrams. So yeah, laxative doses, it can be a problem. You can take it many hours later, but in normal doses, not a big thing if it's separated by an hour.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That was a simple one. Oh, let me go back, and I haven't been unlowering hands properly. Where is that on this control? I don't know that I have that capacity on this setup like I normally do. Maybe if I go over here. Well, I'll just have to remember if I call on you again, keep me honest. I'll just remember who I already spoke to. I think I can do that all right. Claire, you are up. Let's hear what you got for us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for doing what you do.
You're welcome. Hey, if I could pause for 1 second. Someone just said the participants themselves can lower their hand. Normally I can do that, but I can't controlling this from my laptop. So if you can unlower your own hand to make me not make a fool of myself, I'd appreciate that. So there you go. Thank you. Go for it, Claire.
Thank you for doing what you're doing. I never heard of vitamins that are specific to thyroid. That sounds like you probably need to do that.
Yeah, I thought it'd be a good idea.
Oh my goodness. I'm very, very dysregulated at this point. I have so many things going on. I have heart palpitations that seem to be unregulated. I've got sleep apnea. I have Hashimoto's. And I went off of, can't remember what it is, that when I went off it was to control low dose naltrexone. When I went off of it, I gained 10 pounds in like 3 weeks. And I think that contributed to the dysregulation. So my idea now is work on weight and try and get that down. And I looked at your metabolism boost and I wondered if I could do it. But in the descriptor, you said that you really need to have cortisol regulated. And I think maybe one or two other things. I'm very dysregulated. Will that work? Will I lose weight or not?
Well, it can still be a helpful part of things. So it's not so much that cortisol would keep it from helping, but if cortisol is off and you can address it, things would work better for you. I just talked about like some of the big factors for that. Are you on a high dose of thyroid medication? Is that behind the palpitation?
No, actually, I ate someone's diet and I have just come off of my last pill, I believe. I started around 90. Oh, the other element I didn't mention was at one point I was taking supplements not for iodine, but there was like 685 micrograms of iodine in them. Yes, I think there was one other number that I didn't add in, and had been on a conference and the person said, you need to help your gut by eating a different ferment each day. One of the ones I picked up was a kimchi that had the iodine in it. Between the supplementation and I think the kimchi, because it was that week that my thyroid flipped to high. So that I'm working with someone now just in the last 3 weeks, and we were bringing it down. But I have been on your diet to reset the thyroid for about 4 weeks. I was in the osteoporosis summit conference.
Okay. Well,
and that I knew of you from your one other book, probably Metabolism Reset, that I had used, and it was effective. So I knew of you from that what you say works. So I listened carefully and I bought the book, and the next day started the diet and have felt better and am on my way, but everything's so discombobulated that I'm just not sure. I think the weight is probably key. I've built a pillow pile that I just prop myself up at night, and that seems to be better. I bought a ring to test to see is equivalent to pole socks. I'm just trying to do whatever I can to help myself. In addition to this person, the person helping me is trying to get data now. So I just did a spit test today, and but that's going to take time, and I'm thinking, okay, what can I do in the interim?
When that comes back, take a peek at the adrenal reset diet. There's a chapter in the back, and each different set of results you would get from your spit test, there's a distinct chapter for that. And there's really detailed lifestyle steps you can do that can help with that, but that can reverse as well. And a cool trick is the metabolism reset, the adrenal, the thyroid reset. You can get thyroid benefits, whatever you're doing, as long as you stay on the green light foods from the thyroid reset diet. So if you're on those and you're doing like the metabolism reset, you can get a 2-for-1. You can get the same benefits from both those ways very easily.
Those template pages were magic, because then I could take my own food and just figure out what's in the green and just plug it in, and it just simplified it so much. So thank you.
Yeah, and stay on top of the thyroid levels. It's really common in a situation like yours that things can stabilize and you may not need ongoing treatment for that. That's all really encouraging.
That was very much so. I was happy to let go of that last 15 micrograms. So yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Okay. These are cool. Fun to see you guys here. Let's grab a few more. Janie's with us here tonight. Janie, what have you got? Let's hear from you.
My microphone on. Thank you. I'm kind of new to your work, even though I've been getting emails. I decided to jump in finally.
Good to have you.
I've been taking T3 and T4. I'm pretty regulated at 4 and 100 compounded, and I don't have Hashimoto's apparently, but I've been taking standard process supplements, which is in that 30 pill range that you mentioned, like a lot. And I feel I just started taking them maybe, 5 months ago. And I've been gaining weight. I can't say that it's necessarily that, but I wonder. And so I'm just wondering where to start with your supplements, with those things kind of under the thyroid a little bit controlled, I guess. But I do have inflammation. I've got some pretty high inflammation number going on in my labs. So weight loss and inflammation, I just didn't know where to start.
The foundation, tonight's topic would be perfect for a foundation. The bundle's a good starting place. And okay. You mentioned too about just the weight. I was just writing the next book, and what I kept on coming back to is that I'm talking about like some big recurrent symptoms of hormone imbalance and the top 5 symptoms. And in the book, I argue that the one symptom that affects more symptoms than anything else is weight. So as far as like bang for the buck, if you can make a difference on that one, you help everything. And that's not true for many other symptoms. The other cool thing is that it's not a matter of, you see all these ridiculous numbers about what ideal weights are, and they're not realistic. They're not like real world numbers. It's not that. When I say improving it, it's not that. It's like the first couple pounds. So when weight loss is done in a healthy way, your body can have the first few pounds, like 5 or 10 pounds, lead to huge changes in health. So this is a crazy stat, but I just had my one little prop. Here's another prop. So here's a piece of gum, right? So that probably weighs about 4 grams. So here's about 2 grams in mass. So we talk about weight loss. So 2 grams of fat in the pancreas, that's diabetes. So 2 grams of fat loss coming out of the organs, that's now non-diabetic. So it's not like you got to like lose massive amounts of weight to get healthy. That's a silly idea. It's the first few pounds that are targeted when it's done well that completely transform health and symptoms and make a big difference in inflammation. So inflammation, the biggest thing that makes that is a type of cells called adipokines. Cytokines got a lot of press during the COVID era. They're internally generated sources of inflammation. Adipokines are stronger, and adipose means fat tissue. They come from fat cells. They're the largest driver of inflammation in the body. We know that there was a link between body weight and arthritis. And for a lot of years, it seemed logical to think that if someone is heavy, they ground their knees down because they're like wearing a backpack. There's extra weight on their knees. Now I know there's no bearing whatsoever. It's a chemical inflammatory effect. It has no relation to the actual body weight. It's solely from the inflammation from the fat that gives rise to all of that. So I would target that. I would look at the foundational nutrients, consider metabolism boost, look at the metabolism reset diet. That was really my best answer to not just weight, because it really is about fat and it's about waste. It's about the fat that's not even the belly fat, but it's the organ fat. That's the dangerous stuff. So how do you target that in ways that lead to lasting fat loss? And yeah, that's what the metabolism reset diet is all about.
So as far as the actual products that I should start with would be maybe the metabolic or the
metabolism boost, and then the daily
metabolism boost, and the foundation, and then also the bundles. What is that?
Well, the bundle is the foundation.
Oh, okay.
So that's the daily reset bundle is the multi called the Thyroid Daily, plus it's a low iodine fish oil, and then a soluble version of calcium magnesium that won't mess up your thyroid meds. So those are all bundled together to make that core foundation.
But then maybe add the metabolism boost also.
If weight was a concern, that can help that part go easier.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'll definitely be chiming in more often. Thank you.
You're welcome. Look forward to seeing you again.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. Belenki. Am I saying that right? I think I did. Let's see what you got this evening.
Hi, Dr. Allen. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing fabulous, thank you. I'm kind of new to you.
Oh, cool. Welcome.
I actually
Thanks.
Thanks. I heard of you through, I watched a lot of Terry Savelle and Foyer, and she had mentioned that she had done your metabolism reset. I hear a lot of people talking about it. I know this isn't really targeted specifically at metabolism reset, but
it's all good.
So someone gifted me the book, and I bought the Amazon because I'm more of like an audio reader.
Sure.
So I kind of was doing like both, and I just finished it. And so my question, this is like so awesome that I get to ask you this question. I needed to get like everything that I wanted. I had a little bit of confusion because in past times, I had suffered from some cortisol levels that were very high, and we brought them down. I mean, they were like off the charts high. And so I was having some weight problem at the time. I was probably I went from like 150 and jumped to like 163. And then it was just kind of going like up and up and up, even though my cortisol levels were coming down. And so I'm like, okay, what's going on here? I started to kind of change some things, like maybe relax a little bit more and maybe not eat as much junk food, but we just purchased a house. So we were kind of, and forgive me, but
no kitchen access for a while.
Yeah. So it was like ramen noodles and and rotisserie chicken for like, so coming back off of it, I have my husband's cousin who lives with me, and she's, obese. And so we got the book, we've been reading the book, we're done with the book, and we're about to get into the metabolism reset. And so I didn't know how much more information. So we ended up grabbing pea protein from a friend of ours who sells Arbonne, and they have like this new pea protein that has cranberry and brown rice protein in it. And so it tastes really good. There's chocolate, there's no sugar, and it's non-GMO. So we're like, okay, let's do this. Two of the questions that I had, one was, what would be the best resistant starch to have with that, to pair that up with? Because I from what I gather in the recipes, it's some protein and then some resistant starch, correct?
Yeah.
So which would be like the best? The one that you already have like on your site? Or like a prebiotic that has the fiber in it?
Yeah. So there's a lot of prebiotics that can be useful in various ways, but they're not the same as resistant starch. So,
okay.
And there's also other products. For example, you can find like potato flours or green banana flours. But best I can tell, we did one that we certified the RS content. I started out with that project of making it's called RS Complete. I started that one out probably like 6 years ago. No, probably like 7 or 8 years ago. It took 4 years to complete the product because I figured I could just order a bunch of these raw materials and put them together and call it good. But then I thought, well, I want to be sure they actually have a good amount of resistant starch. And the problem was there was no way to assay. So we had to develop techniques to actually assay for resistant starch. So once we developed the techniques to assay for it, we found out that these products had none or they had a lot, and it was all over the board. Like the same product from different manufacturers, the same powder would be completely different. So we honed down on suppliers and subtypes that were consistently having therapeutic amounts of resistant starch. But we would buy like green banana flour or unmodified potato flours from Amazon and test them. They'd have nothing. Or this batch had a lot, that batch had none. So it was totally hit or miss. So that's been kind of a theme of mine, is that if there's something that is already made out there that's great, go get that. I'll do something else. But if there's like an important thing you can't find, I'll actually make it. So that's why I did make the RS Complete.
Okay, so the green banana flour, is that the same thing as like plantain flour?
It's related, yeah.
So there was a prebiotic. I was going to get your resistant starch, but my accountability partner, if you will, she ended up getting a prebiotic that had green banana Like it had a big mixture of like the green.
And some of those have as much as 80% resistant starch in green banana flowers. Others have less than 1%. And there's like no way of knowing which is which.
So would you recommend, because I've had the only thing I'm taking right now is a multivitamin, and I'm doing some probiotics, which is such I do see a naturopath myself. I just haven't seen her in a few months. She's super, super busy. So one thing she had recommended was, I don't know if you've heard of the Pure GI liver and GI detox. She said that might be something that I don't know if you know what this is, but so
not off the top of my head.
No. Okay. So
I talked a lot in the book about during the reset stage, just being very focused and specific. The more things you take, the more your liver has to work. So at some point it can become counterproductive towards detox. So yeah, the RS Complete is the most effective version of resistant starch to help the program work well for fat loss. And if you don't know this already, you guys, there's a free Facebook group we have, and there's 20,000 active participants. They give a lot of good support. I have a support team in there daily. Right now I'm on a book retreat, but normally I'm in there pretty active as well. So yeah, check out the Metabolism Reset group on Facebook. And there's always someone who's starting a reset or at various stages of one. And it's so helpful to get encouragement and support from that group. They're really awesome.
Currently I'm on a Facebook fast. Is there another way to get some?
I respect that.
Since August, I've been off of Facebook. So anything that's going on Facebook, my husband and I share pages. So he's been kind of filling me in on people and what's going on and stuff like that. So I try to stay away from Facebook, but is there another type, a resource besides the book that I could reach out?
There's an app that we have, and I'm going to make a note to be sure that because you're signed up for the webinar, obviously, I'll make sure that you get a mention about that app. So I know they talk about it in the Facebook group, but I'll make sure that in the email to talk about these webinars, I'll mention the app so you'll see that there. So you don't have to go to Facebook to get it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And then I had one more thing. I'm sorry to tie you up, but this is incredible that I'm in front of you. It's oh my gosh, what can you say? If you ever meet Jesus, what are you going to say to him?
I got a lot more questions for that guy.
Me too. So hormone imbalance. So one of the things that I've been noticing is that I'm just kind of going up in weight. And I just finished this 30-day detox. And I hate doing 30-day things because, I don't want to overload my body with things to do. But I had gone off that, and then I had lost 11 pounds. And then I think I ate crappy 2 days. And then all of a sudden I'm whoa, so up, it was my son's birthday and I had cake and whatever. So could there be a hormonal imbalance that's causing this? Or if I just stick with the metabolism reset, I should try that, and that should kind of help me to regulate things.
Stick with that. Yeah, take a look at that. And there's a lot of Q&A in the back of the book, a lot of troubleshooting tips in there too. So we can walk you through quite a few of those sorts of things.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking this time. And sorry that it's not crazy thyroid related, but I'm determined to get you on camera and ask you questions.
You're all good. Good luck with everything. Keep us posted.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, let's get a 7 more here. Yeah, lots of new faces. This is a cool thing. Here we go. And Tara, you are up. Let's hear what you got this evening, Tara. Tara with an R for the last name. Here we go.
Thank you. Hi.
Welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Good. You got some light there. You're in a different time zone than I am.
Oh, yeah. I'm in San Francisco.
Okay.
And it's hailing right now, so it's really bizarre.
Wow.
Gosh, so a couple things. When you just talked about supplements and how they can end up messing up your liver, toxifying up your liver, what is so I'm really, how do we figure out what supplements? Is food-based okay? How much is too much, in general?
Yeah, food-based is not a meaningful term. It is one that is talked about quite a bit, but ultimately it's one that it's not a distinguishing term. So a little more details on what I talked about there. So the paper was acute liver failure and emergency room admission. So what they saw was that 20% of those with emergency room admission because of acute liver failure, the ultimate cause was found to be just long list of supplements. And there was a couple ones that were more common than others. Believe it or not, green tea extract was rather common as far as an individual one that seemed to be a culprit for people. There's a lot of supplements that aren't commonly on the market that can be hepatotoxic. So like kava root is a popular thing as a relaxant. For a little while, kava leaves were in some products. Those are horribly hepatotoxic. Those really aren't in the market anymore. But the really interesting thing I saw was that it wasn't so much the particular thing, it was the total number. It was the large quantity, large number of different items. So what I think about is just being targeted and specific. There's foundational nutrients that are a good idea in reasonable amounts. And so you start with those. And then on top of that, you do things for a specific reason and for a season. There's a purpose behind them. There's something you're tracking, and they've got an end date. They're not added on forever. But the pitfall that happens is people often start with some foundational nutrients. Maybe they're getting a lot of extra stuff in there, like massive doses of things. But then they always hear about something that might be a good idea, and that gets added on to the mix. And then that's added on, and that's added on, and that's added on. And soon you've got like this medicine cabinet that's overflowing. And either you just struggle and take a ton of pills, or every now and then you say to heck with it all, and you don't take the things you should take. So that's the cycle people tend to go through. And I argue that, no, just be very cautious and guarded and do things, have some very clean, specific foundational nutrients that aren't going to make things worse. And on top of that, everything else should have a reason and a season. There's a clear reason for it. There's a duration for it, and you've got an end date for it. And it's not going to be added on to a forever list. So that's a general strategy. And the things that could be foundational are things that our bodies need and they cannot make, that we have to get from outside of us. And that's basically the thyroid, the daily reset bundle. Those are all the things that we need that we can't make. A lot of things that we need that we can make often end up in pills, but our bodies make them, and they can easily become redundancies.
Okay, interesting.
So that wasn't a specific answer, but that's kind of a thought process. That's like how to think through. And
I get it. And I wasn't sure if it was more like the actual vitamin nutrients versus herbal, but it sounds like.
Well, so herbal, I would put herbal in the category of a reason and a season.
Okay.
Herbs are can be food-like, and they can also be very medicinal. There's some to where they have exacting dosages, and there's others to where they're practically like carrots, like astragalus or ginger could be in those categories. But those things are often a lot more cost-effective and a lot more therapeutic doses to get them in food. Have ginger tea on a regular basis, cook with curries or whatnot. You get a lot more of those. You absorb them a lot better. Then there's phytonutrients. And those are things we find naturally occurring in food. So I mentioned a moment ago about green tea extract and then its role in liver failure. That's a bizarre thing. So phytonutrients, they're more accurately called phytotoxins. That sounds strange, but most of them are naturally occurring pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides. They're things that plants use as biological warfare. And they cause a reaction in our bodies that's called hormesis. So what happens is, here's broccoli as an example. So broccoli has a compound called glucosinolate. Glucosinolate is horribly, horribly toxic. It's an insecticide. But the tiny amounts of it that are in broccoli, when they come into our body and they pass through our liver says, wow, it's a tough world out there. I better get ready for battle, And your liver ends up performing better because of that little trace exposure. Now, if that trace exposure was massive, it would be overwhelmed. But the amount of these things that we naturally come across from a variety of foods is generally healthy for us. But when we concentrate them outside of food, it's hit or miss. And so no one ever has harmed their liver from green tea, but green tea extract is a different story. So so herbs, phytonutrients, they've got to be used very precisely, and they can combine in ways that are unpredictable. So those are things that they have their place, but that's a reason, a season, a really good strategy. But they're not things to throw in the everyday mixture.
Even like vitamin D.
Vitamin D is an essential nutrient. We need that. Our bodies can't make that. But so but the dosing is exacting. That's one to where too much is just like too little or worse.
Okay. All right. And then I have a question for my girlfriend who has Hashimoto's and Graves. So if your TSH has not gone up in 2 years after being medicated for Graves with methimazole, yeah, what would you recommend? They are now off meds, but are taking bugleweed.
Well, bugleweed, there were some animal studies in the past. It can be a source of iodine. There's a drawback about that. It can have iodine in that. So there's not good evidence that it's helpful for Graves. If someone wishes to do just general protective measures, take a peek at the thyroid reset diet to avoid extra iodine and consider hyperthyroid support. That's what it's formulated for. Overall, though, if she's staying stable, she's got a good chance of remaining that way. But those are two things she could do to help increase those odds.
Okay. And it's interesting how much about the iodine comes up. I actually tested really low on iodine.
How were you tested?
I don't know. I see a functional medicine.
Blood or urine?
It was urine.
Yeah. So urinary iodine tests are not diagnostic for iodine nutritional levels. That's one of the biggest misnomers. They're very accurate, inexpensive tools to screen a population, but an individual has to be tested, no exaggeration, over 300 times to be within 90% predictive value. So there's just no relationship between a urinary iodine test and one's nutritional iodine status.
How can you find out then blood is better, or there is no way?
There's no accurate test for individuals. It's really a matter of just population exposure. And in the West, our population exposure, we're categorized as one of the nations at risk for thyroid disease due to iodine excess. We're not at an iodine deficiency state.
Huh.
Grab the thyroid reset diet. It's a whole story about that. It's all about that in so much detail.
All right. So I just took kelp and then it went up little by little by little. I think it got up to 20.
Please read the thyroid reset diet and talk to your doctor about that too.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good questions. Okay, let me grab a couple more here. I'm on a different time zone now. I think I mentioned I'm traveling. Whenever I finish a manuscript, I do a retreat, and I spend about a week doing nothing but that. I didn't want to break up the momentum of these webinars, so I still did this, but that's pretty much this is my only external contact. Otherwise, I'm in a cabin in the woods by a lake in the snow and didn't even plow the road. It's just me and the book here today. So Sue, let's hear from Sue tonight. Get a couple more of these. Go for it, Sue.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Dr.C, for taking my question.
My pleasure.
I have a question about calcium. You mentioned I have had Hashimoto's, seems to be under control. I had high antibodies at one point, but it seemed to have had to do with some gut issues that I had, and those are resolved. And so those are better. That's better now. But I have never taken any calcium, and I have had bone density tests done, and they seem to be good. So I'm a little hesitant to take any calcium, and I wonder if it's because isn't there a balance there that you could, if you take calcium when you don't need it, I don't know. What can you tell me about that?
Sure. So too much, the wrong types can be problematic, no doubt about that. And if you've not had bone thinning just yet, that's a good thing. So the thought is just cutting the risk of future bone issues. So we need calcium for maintaining bone density, and dietarily, once we go past dairy, it gets to be slim pickings. There's a lot of non-dairy products that are fortified with calcium. That's not different than taking calcium supplementation. You're still thinking through what forms are there and what doses there are. But yeah, past dairy, there's not a lot present. With dairy, you got the iodine to sort out, and that's the big issue for thyroid function. So that's the conundrum. If you really are on a diet that's healthy for your thyroid, you can't get that much calcium from foods otherwise. So water-soluble calcium citrate in reasonable amounts with a healthy diet, no drawbacks, but just insurance to keep from bone thinning being an emergent problem.
Okay. So So if I don't have any symptoms of bone density issues, I still should be taking the calcium, you think?
Yeah, it's a smart preventive thing. That's recommended across the board by the U.S. Task Force and OBGYN groups, just to cut the risk of developing osteoporosis. The risks are higher with thyroid disease. Mm-hmm. And so basically the Daily Reset bundle, that includes the calcium. There's a lot with calcium too that's important as far as vitamin K and its subtypes, the relevance of manganese as well as magnesium, the relevance of selenium and boron. So all this stuff has to synergize together, and that's already been done. So the Daily Reset bundle actually covers the basis for bone micronutrients as well. Yeah.
Okay. Good. I have another question. One of the things that I've been dealing with for quite a few years is I have a polycystic liver, and nobody can tell me what causes that or what to do about it. It's my liver functions seem to be fine when they do the tests. Everything seems to look okay, but my liver is very enlarged because of a lot of cysts. And I also have, gone through the process of having Hashimoto's and trying to get that under control. And I just wonder if do you know of any connection between the two that I should?
There's not thought to be a clinical relevance for polycystic liver. Funny thing, but there was a company called Ameriscan many years ago, and their idea was they would do head-to-toe MRIs and screen and find all these problems in advance. Well, they went defunct. They're gone. We now know that if you take any healthy person and look from head to toe, you find a whole lot of lumps and bumps and things that are different here and there. And that's just one of the wonderful ways that you're unique.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe I shouldn't worry about it.
You definitely shouldn't worry about that.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything you do.
You're welcome. Thank you for that. Let me grab a couple more here still. These are always good. Nicole, you're sitting there waiting so patiently. What have you got for us this evening?
Sorry, unmute. Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand. I
thought yours was up. Did I not?
Oh, was it? Oh, well, that's fine. I have a question, but I was going to save it for the next session because it was about adrenal. So, but I do have a question about tonight. I'll save those for that. But, selenium on the presentation you just gave, it said it helps with hyperthyroidism. I have always understood that it helped with T4 to T3 conversion. Is that not correct?
There's almost nothing that it doesn't help with when it comes to thyroid function.
Okay, good. Because
you could close your eyes and point to something, and it probably helps with that as far as your thyroid goes.
Okay. No, that's the only question I have for you tonight. Most of my questions are about adrenals because I think that it's possible that that's always been more my issue than thyroid.
It's a big thing. We want to talk about that one soon.
So I'll just probably save it for the next time. And if you don't cover something, then I'll ask. But
that sounds perfect.
Okay.
We'll chat then. Okay, Tammy from Texas. Let's get a couple more here still. Go for it, Tammy.
Am I unmuted?
You are now. You're all good to go.
Okay, great. So I was over-medicated. I was glad to hear in some of the other sessions that I listened to, you telling people you're taking too much. Because I was over-medicated 7 years ago, and I thought I was having a heart attack, thought I was dying. I was on Nature Thyroid, and it was a cardiologist who said, I see this all the time. They travel their bell curve. They had upped my meds from 90 to 180, take it twice a day.
Why were they giving you so much? What was the rationale?
My TSH was 4. Okay, I didn't realize back then once I went to the cardiologist, he's like, I'm old school, 0 to 5, I don't touch you. You really should not have been on that much. I'm overweight.
So I'm sorry, so you were 4 when they started therapy? You weren't on 4 when they had you on all that medicine, though.
Yeah. It balanced between 2 and 4, and I got on it because I was told it was, I needed to be on it. And so I trusted back then. And then I started doing my homework and finding out, wait, this might not be. So long story short, they're like, oh, if you just get off all your meds for 2 or 3 weeks, you'll be fine. Well, I wasn't. When I got back on them at a lower dose, I went right back in this tailspin. I couldn't move. I couldn't function. It was like all of a sudden, come 3:00, I was normal, went about my business. Boom, in the middle of the night, something would set me off. And then, oh my gosh, it was awful. Tremors, you name it. I had it all. So I finally just got off everything and worked with a homeopath. Still not back on meds. And the thyroid seems to be fine, thank God. Antibodies constantly at 200. But I still can tell when I'm hyper and when I'm hypo. So I'm assuming that most of my problem is inflammation because I have myofascial. That started after being over-medicated. So then walking became an issue, exercising, all of that became an issue. So I got on curcumin and boswellia to try to something for inflammation. Is that, if I wanted to do the metabolic program you have, is that going to help? Because I mean, I in that 1 month of being over medicated, 30 pounds dropped, like, woo. Yeah. But then it just came back and I can't get on meds and I don't want to be really, considering all my numbers are really good, but the inflammation, as my grandmother used to say, how do you get rid of bat wings? You have all this, it settles here, or it's in the saddlebags, so where's how do we deal with that metabolically? Is that still thyroid? Is it, where do you go?
In your case, think about the foundational support, think about antibody support for lowering inflammation, helping the immune response, and look at the metabolism reset as a good method for that. So where you were when you were talking about your TSH scores, this is what's called subclinical hypothyroidism. Your cardiologist is right. There's been a lot of papers written about this recently. So there's a big difference, and this is difficult because I've talked a lot about optimal thyroid levels, but there's a big difference between at what point should someone start therapy and then what to do for someone who's already on therapy. They're totally different numbers. So many people would think that if there's lower symptoms and better outcomes when the TSH is, say, between 0.5 and 2, many think that you would start therapy for someone whose TSH is 4. But there's massive data showing that if someone is there, they don't benefit by starting. Medications don't help them. That there can be cardiac complications. There's no cardiac benefits. There's no lasting benefit for body weight. So any initial changes are almost all muscle loss or water loss, and they're not sustained. But this is called subclinical hypothyroidism. And this is why the vast majority of people were put on thyroid medication in the first place. It was rarely necessary. And it's created this massive glut of over-medication across the country. And this is, thankfully, these things that you're experiencing, they can get better. You can come around from this. But this is a big ongoing issue. This is something I work hard to educate people about. So I founded the American College of Thyroidology last year. And this is one point we've been really trying to train our doctors about, that you don't need to initiate therapy in those cases. Even if you had no other options, medications don't solve these symptoms that can legitimately go with thyroid disease. And now there are better options. We've got clear data showing how dietary change can reverse these problems better than medication can.
And that's hard because we organically, we grow food, we can food, and then it's like I still put on that 10, 15 pounds. And the cardiologist is like, you're German, you're Polish, it's in your DNA. Look at your grandparents, your mother. You're just a nice, fluffy grandmother of 8 kids, and everything I run and do, you're healthy.
So subclinical thyroid disease still can be a factor for weight gain, even if the medications don't help for it. And the subclinical disease, it's not even about good food or bad food. It's just about the iodine exposure. That's the biggest single factor. So take a look at the thyroid reset diet, and then also take a look at the metabolism reset. And the thyroid reset is really about learning the green light foods. And you can go deep on the backstory if you want to hear all about the ins and outs of iodine. That's all there. But the metabolism reset is a 28-day system for clearing the fat from the organs specifically. And if you do that while following the green light foods, you achieve both of those goals at once.
How do you, because you said in the one I just listened to on that, metabolism, don't do a reset more than 4 times a year, take a break. So how do you do that, but still lose weight? How do you, is there maintenance in there for
there's maintenance
do the reset and then
Yep. People don't usually lose weight on maintenance. That's usually not the case. And if you do,
So you just keep doing the metabolism or until you reach that maintenance?
Well, so I'm sorry. So there's two different definitions of maintenance. So maintenance can mean for someone their ideal body weight. And so let me just pull those terms apart. Let's say ideal body weight, but maintenance, what I'm talking about is just what you do between a reset. Like when you're not doing the active 28 days, that's what I'm calling maintenance. So many do achieve their chosen healthy weight within several cycles. And, worst case scenario, 4 cycles the first year, 1 or 2 cycles afterward. But to stay in a weight loss zone for longer than that 28 days or more than 4 times a year, it guarantees recurrent weight gain. It guarantees that even if you do win, you're going to gain even more afterward.
So slow and steady, and just because I got 100 pounds to lose.
Sure. And we've had folks that have lost more than 100 pounds. And that might be what I was talking about, like 4 cycles the first year, a couple cycles the next year. That can totally do it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. I really enjoy listening to your stuff this first time, and I will be back. So thank you.
Good to have you. So I see a Vivian C here. I can't not get this one. My mom's a Vivian C. It's a wonderful name. Vivian, what have you got for us?
Hello. I just have a quick question about desiccated thyroid hormone. My endocrinologist said after 65 that she doesn't like to prescribe desiccated, and I was just interested in what your thoughts were on it.
Sure. What was your goal behind it? You're on T4 only right now, I would assume? Or?
No, I'm on the desiccated now.
You're on it currently. Okay.
I'm on NP thyroid. But she's saying once I reach 65, then she doesn't want me to continue on that because of an increase in AFib.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was curious.
It's a true risk. It's probably more of a dose-related risk. So after 65 and even more so after 70, there's a change between what ideal dosing looks like. And it's probably the case that TSH levels are better off to be a point or so higher after 65 and especially after 70. So if someone is on a dose that might be, say their TSH is around 1.5, that could be too much after 65 or 70. And it's more of a factor about the scores than it is just about the medication.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let's grab a couple more. I was going to try to remember because I couldn't lower the hands. There's 2 Claires. I think I got 1 Claire, but I don't think I got the other Claire. So let's get Claire here. And we'll get about probably two more after Claire, and we'll wrap it up. So go for it, Claire.
Hi, Dr. C. Thank you for taking my question. So for a while now, years, I've been fluctuating with ferritin levels. They've been on the low side, typically, sometimes below normal, sometimes low, currently low. Do any of your formulations support ferritin levels or address ferritin levels?
Heck yeah, easy iron.
Okay, well, that actually brings me up to my next thing, because I typically have been low with regards to iron. However, in the last 6 months, I went from normal to actually high. So I'm above normal for my iron levels and above normal for my iron concentration. Mm-hmm. So does that mean I should not take easy iron if my iron levels are high right now?
So this becomes a precise diagnostic issue, and it takes into account a full blood panel. So yeah, ferritin by itself is one marker of iron storage. And in the context of iron binding capacity, serum iron, other markers, your hemoglobin, your hematocrit, then one can say whether this is something that's a lack of iron or not. But yeah, I'd have to check with your doctor about that one.
Okay. But in general, is there a goal, like who's your target one that you would recommend purchasing the easy iron? Is it someone who generally has lower iron, or is it pretty safe for anyone? Who did you have in mind when you formulated that?
Well, yeah, so there is a concern of iron overload for some, especially for those that genetically accumulate too much iron. So those that have hemochromatosis. And then also men often don't need iron if they're not losing blood or if they're not malabsorbing it. So yeah, menstruating women rarely are at risk for iron supplementation. But as far as whether there's a therapeutic need for that, then yeah, that's more of an individualized thing. But easy iron is for helping ferritin come up and stay stable.
Okay, so if I can sort out the iron levels, then for my ferritin issues, is that something that you feel needs to be addressed? Someone who has low ferritin, is that something that you think should be on our radar?
It can be a source of a lot of symptoms. I'm trying to pull up a link to share with you. Let me get another tab open. Here we go. I've got a really detailed post, and it might even answer some of the questions you had specifically. You can look at this post and take a look at your labs. And yeah, there's a lot of ways in which this can cause hidden symptoms. Some obvious ones like fatigue, but also like muscle pain, insomnia, hair thinning, menstrual irregularities. So it can be a big factor for many. Okay, now I've got the link. Now I'm going to go in our chat here, and I'll drop that in the chat to everyone. And check this out. This talks all in depth about iron, what it means, how to make sense of the labs, why it might matter, why it might not matter. But that'll probably be a helpful thing there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. That's all I have tonight.
You're welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay, I see a Brad here, at least the Brad on the name. A lot of folks have names that may not be theirs that show up on Zoom, but let's see what you got for us.
Oh, hi, Dr. C. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Brad is my husband's name. So thank you so much for giving all of us this wonderful opportunity to not only, get your knowledge, but also to, have a personal question. So I went to see, for my first time, a functional doctor a few weeks ago. He's also a licensed doctor. And I went to see him because I have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia since 2015. But I think my symptoms may have started way before that. So I took my cumulative report from my primary doctor, and I was surprised that I know I have a genetic predisposition with thyroid issues. My mom suffered from hypothyroidism, and then two of her sisters suffered from thyroid issues, and then my grandma had removed completely the thyroid gland. So I know that I have a genetic predisposition, but I wasn't shocked that the doctor didn't want to order extra tests. He just, was happy with what I got. And what I got is just a high, triglycerides. I have 166. And then the TSH is 3.08. And I don't know why with just those two, he was confident to prescribe me the medication that is called levothyroxine.
Oh, wow. Okay.
25, mcg. But the thing that bothered me is that he never mentioned it's for a thyroid issue. He just said that was going to help me to lower my triglycerides also maybe help me to lose some weight. I'm in perimenopause now, so I have been dealing, with some weight issues, and I'm, being active and doing a Flipping 50 program with Debra since June last year.
That's awesome.
And I have been doing some elimination diets with JJ Virgin too. So can a doctor just with those two numbers be confident that what I have is an underactive, thyroid issue? I mean, I'm just perplexed that when I ask why we don't order T4, T3, T3 uptake, reverse, the whole rest of the thyroid panel. And his answer was, no, because in everything else you are fine. So if I order the extra test, it's just not going to come up with a negative number because you are, good in all the rest of your numbers.
So a popular thing in functional medicine is that they like to rip on conventional doctors for not doing enough tests. They want to test more things. And that seems intuitive. It seems like the more tests you do, the more things you'll find out. I push back on that. If you test a lot of random things, you've got a higher chance of finding random results if you don't know what you're looking for. But to your point, this is exactly Tammy's situation that we talked to a few moments ago. to where the doctor put her on medication and the cardiologist said she shouldn't have been put on medication. She developed cardiac problems from medication. You're exactly in her same situation, but not even as far along. So the TSH is the pituitary telling the thyroid to work. When the thyroid's slow, the TSH elevates. We call normal between about 0.4 to 4.5. There's a lot of data saying that people whose TSH scores are in the 3 range, they could be getting some symptoms, and they may be getting some early hypothyroid symptoms. That's totally true. But the assumption doctors have made is that if that's true, if their thyroid is affecting them and causing symptoms, then thyroid medication should help those symptoms. That part's not true. There's massive data. If your TSH was as high as 10, but you had normal levels of T3 and T4, thyroid medicine wouldn't improve your health. It wouldn't help you lose weight. It wouldn't lower your it wouldn't cut cardiovascular risk. It wouldn't cut your risk of worsening thyroid function. So that's what's called subclinical disease. You're not even in that bad of shape. But even if you were, the medicine wouldn't help you then. So this is exactly what Tammy was talking about. So no, that data doesn't support you being on medication. Now, if someone is already on medication and they need to be on medication, if their score is 3, they might do better to have their score down closer to 1. But that's not the same as when someone should start on medication. So I share your concerns and I agree with you. Now, a 25 microgram dose is low enough to where almost anyone could take it if they need it or not, and their body would just lower their own output to make room for it. And they probably wouldn't feel much of anything good or bad because they would still stay in balance. So you probably wouldn't be harmed by that dose. But what happens is then the dose often gets increased and worked up further and further. And then you start running the risk for side effects like Tammy had. So yeah, that's where you would probably be healthy if your TSH was lower, but you can get there from diet. And it's not like healthy or unhealthy diet. It's really iodine specific diet. So yeah, so grab the thyroid reset diet and follow that, and you can see your thyroid function get better.
Now, so my question is, I was surprised because he said that I should take it for 2 months, and then after that, we will see if my numbers improve. But my question was, why then I don't have the full picture of the thyroid? Why if we don't test the other parts, of the function of your thyroid? So in that way, you can have kind of a way how to compare numbers, Well,
Sure.
You have a little higher. I have been told the number 2, under 2 will be, a good range for the TSH. But then, what about the other numbers? So I'm like, how you are going to compare and see if I have improved if you don't have the full picture?
Yeah, so I agree with you. It's better to have a full picture. And I also agree with you that you weren't in a situation where you needed to be on medication.
Yeah, well, and the thing is that he prescribed me that medication without saying, yeah, I think you have a hypothyroidism, problem. He said it was to help me reduce the triglyceride. Mm-hmm. But then I did my online search. I haven't been taking the medication because when I saw all the side effects, I was like, I don't want to be, going through that.
And we thought, so what happens there is that there is a relationship between thyroid hormones and cholesterol, not so much triglycerides, but cholesterol, which is related to triglycerides. And for a lot of years, they tried to find a version of thyroid hormones that would lower cholesterol, but not cause hyperthyroid side effects. And they gave up on that in the 60s. So that was a theory from a long time ago that you could give thyroid medicine to lower someone's cholesterol, but that's gone by the wayside. We know that's not the case.
Yeah, my cholesterol was 196.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. That probably wasn't a valid indication for you to be on medication. So.
Yeah. So my last question would be, should I then? Yeah, I'm trying to, go back again and try to convince him to order the rest of the tests, because I do have 24 symptoms that match for underactive, thyroid. So I think very well could be that it's not fibromyalgia, which I have been having all these years, but it could be, hypothyroidism. But again, unless I don't see the rest of the numbers, then I'm not convinced that that's, what I have.
So you can test more things. There's no harm to that. The first thing to change with thyroid function is the TSH. So you won't have a TSH of 3 and have a low T3 or a low T4. So that just doesn't really happen. So you could test more, but you'd still be in the same place. And you're still not in a place where medication would help you. But you can improve that through diet. Yeah.
But just a number alone with the TSH, that's no indication, right, that I had that condition.
There's not, but given where your TSH was, the other numbers wouldn't have showed anything different.
Oh, okay. So it could be normal, my other numbers.
Yes.
Okay. So what would be then a way how it can be tested that, yes, I have, hypothyroidism then?
You can do more tests if you wish, but you wouldn't really see different results from those. So yeah, I would just focus more so on dietary change right now.
Okay. I am doing, elimination diet, like a detox. So should
it's not really about detox. Please take a look at the Thyroid Reset diet. There's been clinical studies showing that if you're on an iodine-specific diet, you've got about a 97% chance of improving your thyroid function. It's not about good foods or bad foods or detox or gut healing. It's none of that. It's very specific to iodine.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. C. I appreciate your patience. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, one last one. Let's see. Got a bunch of hands up here still. Let's have Ramona finish it up for us tonight. Ramona, why don't you go for it? Are you able to unmute there, Ramona?
I'm trying.
Oh, you got it.
Can you hear me now?
You're
okay,
doing
great.
perfectly.
Thank you. I am having a problem with the tachycardia, like she was as well.
Okay.
I started losing weight in 2021, December, about 15 months ago. No exercise, just diet. It was 235. And it was stall. I would start intermittent fasting, sometimes 2 meals down to 1. By the summer, I lost my appetite. By September, I found out I had thyroid. They put me on levothyroxine. A functional doctor helping me. When that's all they did was give me the levothyroxine, and I was feeling a mess.
Can we expand on that for a minute? So when you were diagnosed, do you remember what you were diagnosed as having and how far along?
Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism.
Okay, do you know what your scores were, any chance?
I'd have to dig out my, I think it was like 5.5, and I went to...
do you know if you were below range on your T4 or if you were just a little bit high in your TSH?
I don't. It's giving me so much brain fog, I wouldn't even attempt to guess. I would have to dig it out.
It sounds like you had subclinical disease. So we'll come back to that.
Okay. And I've been listening, so I do get that. But so he's been treating me with the supplements, like you say, that can actually cause more problems. And I started getting tachycardia, and every 2 weeks, I get below 160 pounds. I don't go below 160 pounds because about 15 years ago, I got down to 147. It's painful. You can't put your elbows on the table. And it's just a tachycardia. I have kyphosis in my middle spine, so it's compressing my heart even more. And I'm just worried I have a heart attack. It just feels horrible.
Do you know what
the doctor? They tell me there's nothing wrong with me. They sit me there for 20 minutes. There's nothing wrong with you. It's all in your head.
Which state do you live in?
Connecticut.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any referrals off the top of my head, but I would really consider changing your care. From what you said, it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like you have medication to go on thyroid medication. Yeah. So 2 ways that I and my team can help. So one of which is my doctors work directly with people and they manage care, they manage medications, they do all that. And that's for Arizona, California, Oregon, Washington, Montana, and Utah. I'm pretty sure. I know it's not Connecticut. But the other option is I do thyroid second opinion consults. So with those, I don't act as a prescriber, but I will go deep into all of your labs, all of your data, and I will make very detailed recommendations that you can do with your own care team. I don't always offer those. I happen to have a few available in the next couple months, and then I'm going to stop for the summer, and I may or may not do those again in the fall. But that's thyroidopinion.com. I think the link will probably pop up.
I had put it in the text there, like if he doesn't answer my question, what do I do? And they gave me a link. So that was helpful.
That's the way we could talk more in depth about that as well. But it sounds like you're one also where it really wasn't an indication for you to be on treatment. The simplest answer would be your TSH wasn't ideal, And that's really what the thyroid reset diet is all about. So you can go deep into that, and that can be quite helpful. But for more personal guidance, I'd be happy to, if there's still some available, to do a consult with you.
Yeah, I just would like to lessen this. I'd be happy to get on any diet because it's like no diet's working, and
sure,
I just don't want this all the time. It's just so
several
annoying.
clinical trials showed that people that had subclinical disease like you did, that 97%, or about 80% fully normalized thyroid function within about 3 months. Those who didn't saw it radically improve, and many had TSH scores in the 50 to 200 range. So yeah, that's very consistently helpful.
Yeah, I did have a problem with calcium. I just wanted to mention to the other lady, Sue Crawford, back in 2011, I got carotid artery dissection, and they had done an MRI of my head, and they found calcium in my brain. Mm-hmm. So they went back to the throat, and that's when they found the bilateral carotid artery dissection. Mm-hmm. And I haven't been too keen about taking calcium supplements. I've been just really getting it from my diet. And I got my bone density done this year. It was actually better.
Okay. Yeah, you don't want to mess it up with the thyroid either. Those things go together. So.
Yeah, I was surprised. It was actually a little bit better.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Yeah, thank you for that question. We see this so commonly. People get treated with medication, and it's assumed the medication will reverse the symptoms. And there are cases where it does. Those who've had a thyroidectomy, those who have overt hypothyroidism, the medication is essential for them. But most people are put on medication when they never really had a cause for it. And it tends not to resolve the symptoms, and it often can cause side effects. And thankfully, there are other options. So that's what we're really trying to sort through. So that was what we had tonight. I saw one question come about Oregon. And just to clarify that statement I made, so the doctors in integrative healthcare, they can do telemedicine in Oregon. People would not need to travel to see them in person. We can work remotely with people in those states and just take over all facets of their care and help out with that. Those doctors do prescribe, they do ongoing management, they are always around. I'm currently not practicing any longer. I'm more so just doing the books and things like this, and then training the doctors. So, but that was our evening tonight. I might head outside for a minute or so and brave a few degrees below zero. And how do I connect with them? So the doctors, integrativehealthcare.com. I think a link might be in the chat or going up in the chat. And yeah, we're happy to help out with whatever level of thyroid care we can provide. We can do ultrasounds, we can manage the medication, we can take care of all parts of that. I oversee them. I do case reviews with them. I've trained them all. They're awesome. I have full confidence in them and their care. So you're in good hands with the team. All right. Good to see you guys. This one is a less specific topic, so I'm happy to have a good group still tonight. And thanks for turning out, and lots of new faces. That was a lot of fun, and always glad to see folks back again. And we'll come back next week with a more specific one and take it all from there. All right. Take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.